Hi, it's Janet Fitch. It's Writing Wednesday. This broadcast had been postponed due to unexpected uh, conflicts coming up earlier in the day, and I don't know if anyone is having trouble just staying in synchrony, staying in some sort of objective time. I never know what time it is. I get up early. I get up late. I don't know when to, take a shower. I don't know when to change my clothes. People who are having some more success with this than I am um, are having, you know, doing better getting up in the morning, getting dressed as if they're going to work, and moving through a regular schedule. In the morning, I read, and then I write, and then I garden or go for a little walk in the neighborhood or do a video, exercise video, and then in the evening I hang out with my friends. I've seen so many Zoom meetings. I'm seeing little squares in my sleep practically. Hi, Christy. Oh, wine. I could have a glass of wine. Um, it's knowing, it's like having some routine when everybody's home. There's nothing in particular that changes the day from the night and the middle of the night from the morning. One of the things that has been very helpful this week has been there's a writer, Rainey Royal. She's a fantastic writer, and she does something called a Pomodoro, where hi Toby, she does something called a Pomodoro, which is she takes it's based on a tomato-shaped timer. I have, as most of you know, hey Ruthie, I have one of these timers, and what you do in a Pomodoro is you time 25 minutes, and then you stop writing. You go, whoops, time's up. You go do something for 5 minutes, stretch, whatever, pour some coffee, and then you do another 25, then 5 minutes, and you do 4 of those. And from what I know from my own experience in reading about time management is that we often work more effectively in a short burst. Like you can get more done on a Friday afternoon trying to get out of the office than you can do on a whole Sunday of goofing around. There's something about that short amount of time that compresses your activity. Also, Dylan says that during the 5-minute break, it gives what you were thinking about time to percolate a little bit, or to brew up a little bit. So, but when you come back, you have a little bit more of a push. Some people, you think that the interruption is going to just drive you crazy and you want to work straight through. But I found that what we've been doing was we do the four Pomodoro, 25 minutes, 5 off, 25 minutes, 5 off, 4 of them. We take a half-hour break, and then we do another 4. And we did it Monday and Tuesday, and they did it today, but I had my midday interruption today. And I have been getting a tremendous amount of work done. It's really focused me. I know from, say, 11 to 4, I know what I'm doing. I'm writing. And I'm writing with other people who are going to notice if I'm getting up and not there at my computer, because they can see me. It also gives me a reason to take a shower. Sometimes I've just been in my PJs and there you go. Because I had to be there. I had to be there at 11. And that is working really well for my time management crises. I go through phases of being on and off the news. Let's see what questions have come up. focusing. People are starting to settle into the quarantine and getting things getting caught up, and then do it. There were some questions today, but I'm finding the timer method is helping me a great deal. I am freshest in the morning. I get up, I read for 90 minutes. Right now I'm reading a manuscript that has not shown it to anybody yet. So it's very exciting, and they don't want any feedback. So of course I have a little notebook, and I'm writing I'm writing my comments in there instead of on the page, because in case they do want comments later, I won't remember. Your reader is always freshest the first time around, and they can't necessarily see things, what they're stumbling over, after they've read it the first time, unless they've noted it. So I do that for about 90 minutes, trying to stay off coffee. That's, I'm edgy enough without dumping a bunch of caffeine on there. Reading some wonderful books. I just finished a book that I'm going to review today for Goodreads, which is one of my favorite. I know it's owned by the evil empire, but I'm sort of addicted to it. And this is a new book coming in July, so it's not out yet. It's called You Again, by Deborah Jo Immergut, and I read it. I read her first book, The Captives. It came in over the transom, and I like to read books often by people I don't know, because often they're the ones that need a little push, a little help. Anyway, so I love that book, psychological thriller. And the second book just knocks it out of the park. Everyone should try to read this. July. It's a while. But it wins it on it's got the sentence level, it's got the story level, it's got characters. I mean, the terrific characterization, a novel story framework, where a woman runs into an earlier version of herself on the streets in New York. And she really uses it. She really works with it. It is gorgeous writing. So I'm reading that. I'm reviewing more. It helps me to process people's work if I can review it or in some way, pull it through. I just read a wonderful short story collection that's also coming out soon called Grace for Grace, by Steve DeJarnette. Short stories that are just, he's a beautiful writer. God, the verbs, really look at those sentences if you're interested in some beautiful writing. I love that. But we did have questions today. So let's see. Where is my questions? There was a question about the exercises that I had been sharing with you from my ring binders, wondering if I keep them in any kind of order. Now, the thing that you need to know, writers tend to be obsessive people. And this is a power for good, and this is a power for evil. It's like, the Sorcerer's Stone. You can use it, or the Lord of the Rings. I mean, you can use it for good or evil. And one of the things that writers should be very careful about is doing things that use that obsessionality in a way that is not directly productive of your goal. So organizing your exercises in a notebook is a lot like organizing your drawers before you write your novel. I love Marie Kondo, and I find it's something I read when I can't sleep. I'll read Marie Kondo because I find it very relaxing to read about organizing. I'm not particularly organized, but I like reading about it because just the idea that you can be organized is soothing. Um, and the thing that she talks about paperwork, I think, is just brilliant, which is saying that don't bother like super organizing your files, because if you're looking for something, you're going to look in the general file of whatever it is. Credit card bills, you don't really need to organize all the separate credit card bills and all those things. I do, because I was taught to do it that way. Um, but as far as your writing exercises, if you're going to organize them, um, how, I don't even know where you would put, like, organize the hours of the day. I have a book called The Writer's Idea Book that I bought a long time ago from Poets and Writer. No, it's a Writer's Digest book. The Writer's Idea is like a and prompts and stuff. And let's see if he has some kind of an organization. That's a good thing to know. Yes, he divides it up into bending and stretching, exploring, finding form, assessing, and developing. So I don't know that it's really necessary. I mean, he does categorize, but what the difference between I am what I am and other lies and schnitzel with noodles is anybody's guess. I mean, I guess I could study this at length and figure out what the method in his madness is. It's maybe about favorite things, schnitzel with noodles. But I don't know that you really need to, unless you're going to write a book about, with prompts, whether you need to organize your exercises into anything in particular. You could probably divide them the way you divide your notebook. So landscapes, portraits, scents, smells, and then, because as you do those, you would put them into those categories. But I would say that's as far as you need to go. It's more important to, are you creating exercises as you're reading? Let's see, what else can I am totally open to questions this time. But basically we're talking about life in the time of cholera, love in the time of cholera, life in the time of corona. And we have maybe 2 or 3 months of self-isolation. Let's use it. I love doing the Pomodoro. I have a feeling I'm going to get, a first draft of this novel in first draft-ish of this novel, a good hunk of it, working at this pace by, say, in 3 or 4 months. I can't believe how much I'm getting done doing the timer. So, getting an intense 4 hours a day on that material. I can't believe how fast it's coming. So if you can set up a buddy system with somebody and, do a Zoom meeting, God, all those little squares, and you can really propel yourself. There's a lot of interesting things going on online as people find themselves stilled of out of the house activities. People are doing regular readings online. Rebecca Solnit is reading fairy tales online, 5 o'clock New York time, I believe. Maybe 5 Pacific, but I think it's 5 New York. She's local. She's West Coast, so 5 o'clock this time. There's a new website called that's being set up that was started by Carolyn Levitt, who also has a new book coming out, for all these writers who have books coming out during the lockdown and they can't tour and they can't, do readings, and the bookstores are just online only. Um, and it's a way of, it's called A Mighty Blaze, which you should be able to Google by now. And it's a way of getting the word out on new books that are coming out or are just coming out in lieu of book tour. So it's going to have author talks and interviews, and it's going to be super interesting. A lot of people have signed on to it, not just new authors, but established authors who are going to help frame these new works. It's going to be really interesting. There's all kinds of arts organizations who are putting up stuff for free. I'm always putting up stuff on my classes, LACMA free classes, art museums, those art tours you can take for free, museum tours, so much online content. NaNoWriMo, if any of you are nano people, NaNoWriMo is starting a nano stay-at-home nano. So hey Jeff, so this might be a really interesting time to do like a concerted push to move ahead in your book. And it feels like sometimes you feel like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Why am I bothering writing about these people having their very human problems? But you know what? Their very human problems, that is life itself. That is life itself. And life itself does not have to cease, or our interest in it does not have to cease because we are living in an extreme moment. Use the time, use it. And, if we can't see what's going to happen tomorrow, let's really use today instead of pacing around, just being overcaffeinated and worrying about stuff and wiping down the dog food. Let's see, what else? What would you like me to, so we talked before about, if you just feel like you can't relate to what you're writing, to work on shorter pieces, doing exercises, some of the exercises I gave out last time. And noticing the quality of your interactions with people. I'm talking to friends, I'm doing the Zooms, or blah, blah, blah. Really notice how things are affecting you. This is a time to get really, really in touch with yourself. Some people are news hounds, some people aren't. Notice that there's a certain degree, Dana, I'll get your question. There's a certain degree of calm that you get from the news, just knowing what's going on, basically like, where are we, what's going on, where are we on the curve, kind of thing. But if you notice that if you're starting to feel more anxious than you were, as you feel the anxiety riding, stop it. Stop watching it. Stop reading it right there. So it's really about being in touch, with watching a bit of the national news or going on Twitter and just, kind of dipping in, seeing what's going on. If that calms you down, if that makes you feel more in touch, a bit more informed, then notice that. That's good. Then once you feel then you see an image that's disturbing, or somebody says something that's freaky. This is a time to preserve your sanity and really get more in touch with who you are and what you're feeling. What are you feeling? Notice if you're playing one note. If everything seems to be E, 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 E. see if you can change the tune a little bit. My anxiety sounds like E, 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 E. Uh, so it's, so Dana asks, what is NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, and National Novel Writing Month is November. But it's an organization that every day now, because writers are home and working, um, they are every day they are putting up writing prompts and other activities and chat rooms and all kinds of things that they have tools they have available to them from their regular NaNoWriMo month, and they're doing it now. So it's a really good time to join with the writing community, not just your personal community, but with the larger community, and using this time to best advantage. I'm finding I'm reading different things. I want to read quiet, adult, rational stuff, my interest in extreme writing, which is usually my thing. It's not what I want to read. It just is exactly like, feeling kind of queasy and then getting some really rich, fragrant food. It's like, that's not what I want to eat. I want to eat something rational and beautiful and highly crafted. Um, and Christy edits to slasher films, so there you go. Some people find that, that pulls some of the anxiety, whatever. But it's a good time to notice, really feel in the body. Where is this coming? Where is this sitting? Where does it feel? Where does it feel right? So, I don't know. I'm reading quiet stuff that usually my head is too noisy to read, and my writing isn't as quiet as what I'm reading because I'm still me, and I'm a little more intense even on the page, or especially on the page. But I am finding that these focused writing sessions are helping a lot, and trying not to stay up too late because I get into that bad zone where I can't sleep, and I just am in that E. My head just plays that one note all the time. So what else can I talk about? What would you like to talk about? And just trying to have where I write down what I did that day. Oh, that's something else that's happening, is that people are blogging for the Times. There's a column where people are, blogging about the quarantine, day 1, day 2. And today was Steph Cha, who's a writer I really liked, who started with her and it's a plague diary, basically, corona diary, and she writes what she did, and what that does is make you, let's fill our days with something noticeable. I find when you're distracted, you're just milling between activities. You're not really doing anything. So you get to the end of the day, and I was like, what the hell did I do today? Or what did I do yesterday? Whereas if you actually, I read 90 pages of X's manuscript, and I worked on my novel, and I had 3 phone calls with friends, and I did a Zoom meeting with family members, and just really specific stuff. Weeded. So it's difference between kind of caromming between activities and actually settling into one and then another and another. Super helpful. Anybody else have something that's been good for their writing or good for their spirit? Notice people who just make you feel worse. If you are trying to contribute to the world, contribute peace and justice and good things to the world, to ask yourself, am I being alarmist? Am I upsetting other people? Am I contributing to their well-being? Am I being, particularly demanding because I'm anxious? Or am I contributing to calm, a feeling of, strength? Am I putting myself into other people's lives in a positive way? And that's, do you increase people's anxiety or are you decreasing people's anxiety? It's kind of my rule of thumb right now is if I am interacting with other people, am I improving their energy or am I making them more upset, worried, freaked out? If I'm freaked out, I try not to interact with people who are easily freaked out, because what good am I doing them? Nothing. I'm trying not to stick alarmist stuff all over the internet. I'm alarmed enough, and you are alarmed enough without me adding to your anxiety. So I try to be reassuring where I can. What would be a good assignment for the middle school students at home? Oh, wonderful question, Dana. I have a cousin up in Seattle who asked me if I would teach an online course for middle schoolers. So I've actually been thinking about this a lot. I taught middle school. Back in the day, my daughter was in this hippie school that kind of fell apart, and the parents had to step in and teach. So I was teaching essay writing, and I told the kids if they learned how to write a 5-paragraph essay in 45 minutes on any topic that I picked, and they could do it at a drop of a hat, I would teach creative writing the second term. So creative writing was awesome. I mean, they were pretty good at the essay. Topic 3, it's an argument. Your first paragraph creates the argument. The 3 paragraphs, discuss some aspect of what you're trying to prove, and then the last one kind of sums up what you did. But a good assignment for middle school students was the creative writing assignments. Okay, so we started with poetry, and the first thing I taught was the blues, because the blues is a poem, but it's really easy form. The first 2 lines are the same in a blues. Woke up one morning, had you on my mind. Woke up this morning, had you on my mind. And then the 3rd line rhymes, and so you can have them write a blues, play them some classic blues so they get the form, break it down, and then have them write a blues. We got together and decided what were appropriate topics for the blues. And so middle schoolers, right? What are appropriate topics for the blues? Death, madness, jealousy, murder, jail, right? So it's all the things they're interested in. And then we wrote all the things that that the blues have been written about. and then they wrote their blues. Then the second assignment was the ballad. So I taught the ballad form. I took two classic ballads. So one is House Carpenter, which is a 17th century classic. And then I don't know these forms either. I'm not a poet, but we broke it down. We counted the feet. We looked at the rhyme scheme. Okay, well, that's a ballad. And then we looked at, so we did House Carpenter, and then there's an American ballad called Pretty Boy Floyd, which I love. Um, and what do you know? Pretty Boy Floyd is in the same form as House Carpenter. So that's the ballad form. Come gather round me, children, a story I will tell of Pretty Boy Floyd, an outlaw. Oklahoma knew him well. And it's a long one. They're long. They're stories. They're narrative. And then we took the California section of the newspaper, which is local news, state news, and they picked a crime. They had to pick a crime from the California section. And they could be the victim, the perpetrator, or an outside observer. And they had to write a ballad based on the crime. Oh my God. It was amazing. That was an amazing, amazing thing. For some reason, the form, poetic, like a poetic form, is easier. You'd be surprised. Easier for kids than free verse. People who wouldn't think that they could write poetry could write in a form, because the side that's I can't do this is too busy trying to get the form, so they don't come in and just blank. And then we did the blues, the ballad, and then we did the sonnet. And I used examples from Edna St. Vincent Millay, because Shakespeare, you can't give an exemplar of the sonnet from Shakespeare and then say, you try it. Because they're like, I would be like, no, I'm not going to try that. But I got an Edna St. Vincent Millay sonnet, and we just looked at, I don't know anything about poetry. I was a history major. But I look and directly engage with the text. That's what we did in college. You didn't know anything. You engaged with the text and you figured it out yourself. So we looked at these Edna St. Vincent Millay sonnets, which are all about sex and love and disappointment and everything that middle schoolers are into. And we teased apart, how many beats per line, stresses. We counted the stresses, and then we looked at the rhyme scheme, and it's like, oh, well, that's a sonnet. I didn't even tell them what it was until we figured it out. And then, oh, that's a sonnet. And notice that the sonnet makes a case in the first, say, 8 lines, I think. And then there's a change, and there's like a rebuttal or something coming from another side of things. And it's like, oh, and this is called a sonnet. And then they wrote sonnets. And so these are really good ways to construct the writing assignments for, is to take something that has a form and then don't tell them what it's called. Let them figure out the structure, and then you can tell them this is a ghazal, this is a villanelle. Don't make them do a villanelle. Look at easier forms than that. Limericks, something fun. And then for fiction writing, this is where some of the people who could do poetry, because there's a form to hold on to, had a little more problem with fiction. There's a little maturity that is required to write fiction. And you're at home, so you can't go out and do observation outside. So a lot of the the prompts and exercises that I've given in these days are perfectly good for kids. Smell cinnamon and write about what you smell if they're imaginative. Something that's a real fun thing to do is to give somebody the first page of a short story and have them write the rest of the story. That's fun. What else did I do with them in fiction? You can give them a piece of cloth and go, who is it? When is it? Where is it? So you can give them a piece of like Naugahyde and and they can, maybe it's an old man's reclining chair. Oh, tell me more about the old man. Tell me about his house. Tell me, what does he do when he's sitting in this chair? Do people visit him? Who is it? When is it? Where is it? A piece of lace. Who is this? So those are some really nice exercises that you might be able to use. What else can I? Oh, thank you, Melania, for protecting JF at all costs. Yay. Trying to improve people's energy. That's what you want to do in life. Always, every time. It's really easy to, what did I do? Did I switch this? I have this leaning up against a ball of rope. And sometimes I hit it wrong and you get a look at the rope. Starting, to take the first line of a piece of writing and, write your own story is always fun to do. But definitely notice if things drag you down, if there's somebody who calls and just will not stop telling you who is infected, or notice your own anxiety level and try to really keep that in check, because you cannot be strong for other people if you are completely freaked out yourself. You are a valuable resource. So I'd say, NaNoWriMo, this Pomodoro method is great. Anything that focuses you intensely for short periods of time. And then check out this plague diary thing that's going on in the Times, LA Times. That is really neat. Steph Cha today. It was brilliant. And in the absence of other questions, what do we do if we are debating if our novel is too heavy for the other side of this experience? I wouldn't project as to what is too heavy for people in the future. I think that it is what you want to write about right now, what you feel about what you're writing now, whatever draws you now, rather than, because we can't project into the future at all. God knows who could have guessed this, right? So as a writer, you just, whatever you're pulling out is what you should be working on, unless it's too depressing for you. Beethoven wrote his lightest work in his most depressed times, and he wrote his darkest works when he was feeling strongest. So you don't have to write dark and despair if you're feeling dark and despair. Don't feel like you have an obligation to do that. You can do the very opposite. Well, Thank you very much for showing up for Writing Wednesday, and I will be here next week. So if you have questions that you want me to talk about, please send them, and have a good night. Bye.